Joining us is a man who is no stranger to the Observer. Always good to have him on. We're talking about Couva North MP and UNC Shadow Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Ravi Ratiram. Pleasant good evening to you, sir.
Pleasant good evening, Brother Mikee, and a pleasant good evening to all our listeners out there.
Thank you. So much about crime. We're hearing about it in all quarters, and of course, the whole farming community has not been immune from it. You called, of course, to renew the call for farmers and fishermen to be issued with firearm users licenses in light of the escalating violence and crimes against them. Of course, earlier this month, we remember what happened to Christopher Christian, a young farmer who was brutally murdered during a home invasion. Have you had conversations with the stakeholders as far as the TTPS and others concerning this issue?
Mikey, it is very sad that just the day before this incident with Christopher Christian and his family, that a meeting was held by my office with the Castlefield farmers. This is the second meeting that was held with the farmers, members of the Predial Larceny, members of the TTPS, community policing unit, etc., pleading with the TTPS for increased police patrol in that Castlefield area, because there have been countless number of home invasion, and that community is really a farming community. We have dairy farmers, we have sheep and goat, we have food crop farmers, etc. And that entire Castlefield area, we have a lot of citizens living there, contributing towards our national food security. And it's clear that this government has turned its back on the farmers of our society and the fisher folk. Farmers and fisher folk are under siege, and the government is doing absolutely nothing to assist this community, Mikey.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. This is not the first time you've made this call. Even last year, September, you called on the Commissioner of Police to issue these FULs to farmers. Home invasions is definitely on the rise. That seems to be the new crime craze, just basically getting into homes and taking advantage of what we know as soft targets, those who are most vulnerable. As far as getting some reply, as far as having meetings, you have TTPS reps coming out into the community. How has that been going since?
So Mikey, what was very interesting, what came out of these discussions is clearly the Predial Larceny unit that is assigned to protect and to patrol these farming communities are definitely understaffed. They do not have sufficient. When you have only 15 Predial Larceny officers rotating on 3 shifts, and you have an average of 5 officers per shift, and you are talking about the kind of area that they have to cover, it's really something that cannot be done. It is something that cannot be done, Mikey. So we are still waiting to see the Predial Larceny unit beef up. We are waiting to see the increased police patrol. But while these things are happening, we have renewed our call for the farmers and the fisher folk to be provided with licensed firearm to protect themselves, because it is clear the government cannot protect these farmers, cannot protect these fisher folks, and they need to be able to have that protection to protect their homes, their families.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, MP. I mean, as far as what you're hearing from the farmers, I mean, basically enough is enough. And we're hearing that again from all quarters. And it always seems to be a challenge as far as when, farmers, as far as getting their crops done, having to deal with the high increase as far as a fuel rebate and all of these challenges. What have they been basically saying now? Is this a matter of just throwing in the towel and saying, listen, it makes no sense, it doesn't add up, the candle is costing more than the funeral?
Well, several of these farmers, it is something that they are like third and fourth generation farmers. They are from a family that has been farming in those lands, contributing towards, feeding the nation, feeding the community. And the sad thing about it is that the government is fully aware of the challenges that these farmers are facing. With the pests, we have the giant African snail It was something that was spoken about in the budget. A $3 million allocation was put towards the eradication of the giant African snail, and out of that $3 million, only 27,000 was used towards a bounty program, and then the entire thing was scrapped. They committed to give out what they call it, the snail bait. The snail bait program, that also was scrapped. They started distributing just a few packages of snail bait, and that was scrapped. They talk about beefing up pre-deal larceny. That is not happening. We look at the increasing price of the fertilizers, the chemicals, etc. Nothing is being done. And then you have a government now who you're hearing about this Agri-Expo that is coming on the 16th and 18th of August, where another set of millions of dollars is going to be spent on another PR stunt. You remember 2 years ago that Agri-Expo, approximately $9 million utilized towards Agri-Expo. Yeah. And what sort of tangible benefits did our farming community receive? Absolutely none. And it's a bunch of PR stunts that we are seeing from this government. It's all talk and no action.
Yeah, but there has to be a body. I mean, we know there's the Agricultural Association Society, but there has to be a body to say, listen, this is not working in our favor. And when these expos are staged at this, this cost of money in this guava season, I mean, there has to be a body of people coming out to saying, listen, we have to stand in protest of this because we are not being looked at as applying our trade, getting things done, being a success at what we're doing, but yet still government seems to simply ignore it. I mean, have you interacted with the current Agriculture Minister, Kazim Hussein, and these issues, were they raised with him?
Well, we have been raising several issues that has been affecting the agriculture sector, that has been affecting the fishing community, etc. By filing questions in the parliament. We have not seen the agriculture minister for the longest while, actually. We have seen him for the longest while. Normally when these questions are filed, he will send the minister in the ministry, Avinash Singh, to respond to some of these questions. Things like the agricultural access roads. This is another major issue that we have recently asked questions on. We heard that these roads were actually being refurbished. And from our investigations, the minister in the ministry has misled. He has misled us with his response, because these roads that I spoke about in west of Factory Road, the Felicity Farmers and so on, absolutely nothing has been done to these roads. So you hear the Ministry of Agriculture speaking about persons with their agricultural parcel, their 2 acres parcel, that if it is they're not cultivating these 2 acre parcels, they want to cancel the lease and take back the lands from the farmers. But the reality of it, Mikey, is farmers cannot even access their 2 acre parcels. They can't even access their lands, because when you look at the agricultural roads in this country, my gosh, well, look at the main roads in the country, Mikey, and you will imagine what the agricultural roads are, because the main roads are in a deplorable state across the country. Yeah. And it's a really sad state of affairs.
Yeah, and we have spoken about these access roads before, which I don't understand, especially in Felicity, where the minister himself said that they are looking into it, they're going to fix it. But then, of course, a lot of conversation is taking place, a lot of talk about the fact that some people are cutting up these properties and they're being given out to certain individuals. But I guess that's another story. But at the same time, we are seeing where grants and assistance and land seems to be distributed among people. We're not sure if it's farmers or young farmers. Now, if this is taking place, aren't these individuals also going to be facing these very same challenges? Or are these hand-picked individuals who are going to get some sort of preferential treatment?
So Mikey, again, another PR stunt by this government, because at the end of the day, we have former Caroni workers who are still waiting on their lands. Up to this date, they are still waiting on their lands, and they have not received their lands. Some has died and moved to the great beyond, and their families still are waiting on these lands. The problem that we are going to be faced with is these young individuals who they are trying to get into the agriculture and promising that they will give them the 2 acre parcel of land, they will start them off in that 2 acre parcels. If they do not address the issue affecting the farmers at present, these young farmers are going to face the same exact issues. The same pests, the same giant African snail, the flooding issue. Look at what is happening down in Barracoa and Pinal at this point in time with the floods that we spoke about cleaning the watercourse. We heard MP Tanku, MP Munilal, the honorable leader of the opposition, Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa, spoke out on cleaning of these watercourses. And so said, so done. The showers came down and the south area is now flooded out. Farmers are going to be affected. And we have farmers right in Jerningham here in Central who have been flooded out 2 years now. And up to today's date have not received 1 cent compensation from this government. Any kind of relief. No flood relief, no compassionate grant. Talking about that, Mikey, concerning the fisher folk in Tobago, yeah. I had raised the issue of a compassionate grant to be considered for these fisher folk. While the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan has already set out how compensation will be calculated and will be distributed, etc. There's a lot of bureaucracy in that, and that takes a very long time. We are talking about an oil spill that occurred in Tobago since the 7th of February, and up to today's date, Mikey, absolutely no support whatsoever has been provided for these fisher folk in Tobago. I understand on Monday they had this meeting and the fisher folk was so frustrated with the bureaucracy that the government is trying to dish out to them, setting deadlines like in just 1 week time they have to provide a whole set of information, etc. They're just frustrating the fisher folk out of the industry.
Yeah, which is of no fault of theirs. I mean, but yet still they've been waiting for quite some time. People saying that they'd want their money before they're dead. They say if you sell 10 kingfish a day and you've been doing that for years, and then when you put in a claim for the loss of 10, but then when someone comes and says they're making 100, so so basically they're still making their assessment as far as what the payout should be, and that should not be at this time, at this critical stage, when you have people who are plying their trade and of no fault of theirs, they simply have to find themselves on the breadline. So I mean, any information as to exactly when this money is going to be paid out to these fisher folks?
Apparently not, Mikey. It's promises that never materialized with this government. When this oil spill occurred in February, I recall my colleague, the MP for Couva South, MP Rajanathan Darisingh, had filed a definite matter in the parliament. The matter was heard on the 16th, Friday the 16th of February, and I had the opportunity to contribute towards that motion. I lamented the impact of this oil spill on the fishing industry, and we demanded accountability from this government. From then to now, Mikey, absolutely nothing has taken place. We held a press briefing on the 18th of February, pleading with the ministry and the government to consider a compassionate grant. Create something for these fisher folk. Create this compassionate grant, and they still have time. This is something that they can still put in place at this point in time, so that these fisher folks who have been affected can see some kind of compassion. But this government lacks compassion. This is the most uncaring government in the history of this country. And it is something that is really, really sad. It is something that we as a country have to unite. We have to stand together. And enough is enough. It's about time that we put the pressure on this Ravi administration to call the elections. We have to get them.
No, you're talking about another expo next month, again costing a lot of money. And one of the focus that the Prime Minister said as far as in the agriculture, the entire agricultural realm, is agro-processing. Which brings me to this question. The agro-processing plant that was open in Maruga, is that up and running?
Totally underutilized, Mikey. Totally underutilized. And there's a bunch of talk and no action whatsoever. Just a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity on PMQ, Prime Minister's question, to ask the Prime Minister, with respect to the Agri-Expo, we had so much money that was spent. Can you tell us how it is the farming community benefited from this spending of money? How did it contribute towards the reduction in our food import bill? How did it contribute towards improving the agriculture contribution to our national GDP? Because, Mikey, our food import bill from then to now has increased from 5.6 billion to 7.3 billion as of last year's budget. Our our contribution of agriculture to our national GDP has fallen from 1.4 billion to 1.2 billion. And this is not Ravi Ratiram figures. These are the central bank figures that the central bank has put out there for us. So it is clear that all these millions of dollars have been squandered, have been wasted, and at the end of the day, there's absolutely no tangible benefit. The Prime Minister couldn't answer any of the questions. You know, he danced, he bobbed, he weaved, he threw pecan, a set of verbal abuse. And that's another thing, Mikey. You see the culture of what is happening in this country. We are looking at crime as a serious issue. And crime is one of the number one issues affecting all of us out there as a result of the violence that we have in our society. But I would say the violence is starting with the verbal abuse that the Prime Minister does peddle on a daily basis whenever he opens his mouth to speak. And if he do not understand that verbal abuse translates into physical abuse, translates into crime, he is part of the problem, and he needs to understand that.
Yeah, no. Even if we look at the budget, not just 2023, but in 2022, and you highlighted that, in the 2022 budget address, the issue of the fuel rebate for fisherfolk, that in itself was never brought forward to deal with it and to assist the fishermen.
Mikey, since 2022, we spoke on this fuel rebate, and when the Prime Minister responded to my contribution, he agreed that the fuel rebate to the fishermen, like 10 cents per litre and 12 cents per litre, is definitely outdated. It's draconian. And he did indicate that he called upon the Minister of Finance to review and to have this matter addressed. 2 years have passed, and they have not done a single thing. They have increased the price of fuel on 6 times since they come into government. Fisherfolk used to use the regular gas, which was provided by Petrotrin. After shutting down Petrotrin, they lose the supply of regular gas. They had to go across now to diesel, to super, etc. And the price has doubled and tripled from then to now. From $1.50 it would have been for diesel, it's now like around $4.50. And similarly with gas has increased exponentially, whereas the actual fuel rebate remained the same, 10 cents and 12 cents. That is totally, that definitely shows we have a government who does not look at the entire picture. They do not look at the big picture. They just look at how they can just tax the country, that how they can increase the hardship so that they will derive some kind of revenue to facilitate themselves and their squandermania and their mismanagement. That is what we're seeing at this point in time under this led PNM administration.
But let me ask you, Minister, there are folks who are locked on, they're listening, and perhaps they're asking the question now, if it is that all that these fishermen are doing, asking for, and as well as the farmers, and they're not even being met halfway, why have they not started protesting? Why have they not taken to the streets? Why have they not taken these complaints directly to the door of Kazim Hussein, who is the agriculture minister? Why?
Well, I will say that the protests did occur outside the last Agro Expo. I was pleased to see a lot of farmers did in fact come outside the Agro Expo. We had farmers from Exchange, from Felicity, from up in Wallerfield. They were up there. Members of the Agricultural Society was outside that Agro Expo, and they did in fact send a loud and clear message. Up to recently, the fisher folk with my brother Imtiaz Khan, he had the Calibre fisher folk when they went out to fish, and they were faced with threats from pirates out there with guns being pointed into their face. They marched all the way to the Couva police station. They did in fact file their reports. It is a matter that I did bring up in the parliament. So these fisher folks, these farmers, they have been coming together, like what I told you happened on the Sunday the 7th of July. They came together once again. They met with the Pre-Lasting unit. They met with the community policing. They are now forming themselves into neighborhood watch groups. They are doing the most that they can to protect themselves and to help out each other. But we definitely need the authority to wake up and recognize the responsibility that is in the office they hold, which is clearly this government does not do that. This government is totally failing in executing its responsibility to our farmers and our fisher folk. So,
But let me ask you, do you ever get the feeling that the administration simply is not looking at this from a very serious perspective? As you know, this is something that needs to be dealt with. We're talking about farmers, we're talking about fisher folk who are simply trying to ply their trade, but there's no assistance forthcoming as far as security, as far as, you know, assistance with fuel, as far as assistance with chemicals, as far as access roads, none of these things. I mean, there's a lot of lip service, there are a lot of grants, there are a lot of distributions, there are a lot of PR. We can all agree on that, but something doesn't connect. And if it is that these farmers came out the last time, why are we having another expo? Has that message not reached the ears of individuals that, listen, we are simply not going to stand idly by and have you destroy our entire work that we have set out generation after generation?
well, Mikey, you're very correct. What we're seeing is a lot of talk and no action from this government. It is not that the government is not aware of what the issues are, because if you listen to the budget, they make a lot of promises. They come and talk about how important agriculture is and putting it at the fore of development by putting a 500 million stimulus package towards agriculture. But when you look at it, absolutely nothing was used out of that for the benefit of the agriculture society, for the farming community, etc. They talk about looking into the fuel rebate. 2 years have passed and absolutely nothing has taken place. And the figures are clear. Our contribution of agriculture to our GDP continue to decline on a weekly basis. Food security is going to become a major issue in this country. We did in fact move a motion in the parliament, a private member's motion on food security, and we are on the crisis of we are on the verge of a food security crisis in this country. And if it is we don't wake up and recognize what is happening, we are going to become a nation that is going to be without food in time to come.
Yeah. And I wish you all the best of luck, and you are correct. And it seems as though the powers that be really and truly cannot be bothered until that message really and truly hits and resonates that, hey, enough is enough. I mean, there's so many challenges for these farmers and these fisher folk. It's unbelievable. I want to thank you so much for taking time out linking with us. Best of luck to you and your entire team. And when we talk again, we'll be talking agriculture policy, because we need to start laying out, if it is that the UNC has this to offer, what we can tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago to look out for.
Oh, definitely, definitely, Mikey, is something that I look forward for us sitting and discussing. I want to thank my honorable leader, the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa, for, leading by example at the fore when we look at what went on from 2010 to 2015, the kind of development that we saw in the agriculture sector, the kind of benefits that farmers would have received during that period of time. It is second to none. This country saw development like it never saw before between 2010 and 2015 under Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa, and we look forward to sitting and sharing some of those plans and programs with you in our next program, Mikey.
Thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.